There's a lot of talk at the moment about fake guitarists. You know, guys like Tim Henson and Ichika Nito and a few other people. And I've seen this guy, I can't remember his name, but he's a classical guitarist, and he talks about, a lot of these guys, and another chap as well, who plays kind of like metal shred guitar. I don't remember his name either. I've just kind of been browsing generally, and yeah, they're talking about kind of like fake, and I don't know if I would go as far as to say these guys are fake. Like Martin is another guy that people are sort of giving a lot of stick at the moment. And he handled it in a very bizarre way. The accusations of him being fake. He created like a kind of highly edited video, rather than a raw kind of one. I know there's like live videos of him doing it and stuff. I mean, the guy's clearly not fake. Like you could argue that there was this this kind of like push towards overly perfect, this slightly dishonest kind of overly perfect thing. I think that kind of plagues a lot of the internet age now. I think it plagues a lot of music, is this idea that the performers are so incredibly perfect. And I think that's ultimately what a lot of these guys who are pointing it out are kind of getting at. I think it's definitely too far to say they're fake. I mean, you're calling a guy like Martin fake. I mean, that guy was playing Paganini on the guitar when he was like a young kid. The guy's not fake. Yeah, he's gone a commercial direction with like what he's been doing, and good for him. Like, I mean, he's probably fucking loaded. Everyone knows who he is. Everyone, in the guitar world knows who he is, and his playing is, is insane. But the I'm definitely anti this idea of overly perfect guitar and these crazy kind of like tappy guys. I've not seen a whole lot of raw, performing of that kind of music, and I'm big on studio stuff. I like to. Like, I've been composing a long project, a long rock opera project, and I love the art of creating and producing in a studio setting, and it's not so much. It doesn't really turn into a. The problem is when the music is. It gives off this impression that it is band music to be performed live, like like we're talking. Is it a real reflection of what the band does when you pay to go and see them? And I can kind of get behind that, but the part of me that loves composing and kind of like studio composition and stuff doesn't really care all that much about a concept or a composition or a creation, being quite perfect or whatever. Guitar it's a messy instrument. It doesn't. In the 70s, you listen to like players. It's a very messy instrument, and like that, that little that was an improvisation. I didn't know what I was doing there. Most of what I record anyway when I play the guitar, it's heavily laced with improvisations. I do compose arrangements and put a great amount of detail into them, but a lot of the time, I compose on the fly. I improvise the arrangements, and they can be something you can learn afterwards, or something you can do when the time comes. But it all depends really what your goal is with your music. But I don't think it's fair to call them fake. I think that's just clickbaity, kind of like, look at this. And I think they in some ways rightfully criticize this ultra high production perfection thing. The guitar is very messy. It's not music's messy. Music's not a perfect art. But then you go see like the classical musicians. You go. I've been to see Evgeny Kissin a few times, and for those of you who don't know who he is, he's a world-renowned concert pianist performer. The man is a god at what he does. And he achieves inhuman levels of perfection. It can be done. But we're talking about acoustic instruments here, We're talking about real. It's as real as it could be, and and it's true fine art. The problem, I think, is these tappy kind of math rocky things, as cool and awesome as it is. I've never really seen a great deal of it in a raw context that ever really sounds that good. I've seen videos of them unplugged kind of doing it, and it always kind of sounds a bit thin, and you kind of wonder what they're really doing after it's been recorded and all that. I think that stuff comes part and parcel with like a studio and the processing. But you could chuck someone with a Fender Stratocaster through an amplifier, and. And it is that's how it sounds. Have you been in the room with some absolute it's not perfect. I'm improvising. It's a combination of memorized things and improvised things, and you kind of like, you never really know where you're going. You're always risking making mistakes when you improvise, and this is what guitar is like. They talk a lot about the perfect first takes and like practicing something so over and over and over and over and over until you get the take, and then it becomes kind of like that you're feigning the take, that you're giving off this impression that you can perform that on the night, and there's some good advice, like Frank Zappa used to say, don't do anything in the studio that you can't do in the car park. I'm guilty of that. We're all guilty of that to some extent. No one's perfect, but it is, I'm not a huge fan of I don't think that like it's technically innovative rather, a lot of this math rock stuff, but it doesn't do a lot for me personally, but then a lot of music doesn't do a lot for me personally because I'm into weird music. I like music that innovates in ways that aren't technique. If you look at a lot of this math rock stuff, it's very like musically it's technically innovative, but it's not musically innovative. But then you can say the same about any musical genre, of the past however many years. It doesn't popular music that's popular doesn't tend to innovate with harmony. We saw some of that in the 70s, harmony or structure, and we saw some of that in the 70s, and we've not really seen a great deal of it since. But yeah, I suppose that's just my take on the whole situation with like the fake guitarist era and just how it kind of relies on the studio. I think it's music of the studio, and I think that's fine, but I will always take a kind of like uncompressed lumpy guitar because I feel like it's more human. I feel like it Thank you for watching.